year where 2025 is coming to an end. And at this time of the year, I try to do like a reflection on all the books that I've read. And usually I will try to get at least 24 books read throughout the year. But this year I was really proud of myself. I read 33. So I went past my mark. And I was super excited. And I'm going to go through every book that I read, just give like my rating and what genre or what it was about. I first started this year reading The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a mystery thriller about a young woman named Avery, and she is left all of this money by this man in his will, and she has no idea who he is or why he left her all this money. So the book is spent her trying to figure it out, her navigating his family because she has to live with his family in order to get the money. I ended up giving this one 4.25 stars. Then I read Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. This is the third book in her series. I think it's the When in Rome series. And each one follows a sibling in the Walker family. This one is Emily. She's a teacher who secretly writes romance novels. And then she accidentally sends the manuscript to her principal, who's conservative, and in her story that she wrote has some spy scenes. So she enlists the help of her rival teacher to help figure out how to get it back. I gave this one 5 stars. This was super fun. I loved it. It was my first 5 star of the year. I enjoyed it. It's one of my favorites. Then I read The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the second book in the Inheritance Game series. This one still follows Avery in her quest to figure out why she's gotten this money and trying to figure out how to live in this family with everything that's going on. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then I read Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. I think that's how it's pronounced. This is the first book in her Crimson Moth duology, and it's fantasy, and it takes place in a world where being a witch is illegal. And this follows Rune, who's pretty big in society there, and she's trying to hide the fact that she's a witch. And it also follows our male main character, who I think his name is Gideon, if I remember correctly, and he is a witch hunter. So it's enemies to lovers. This was really fun. I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 stars. Then I read Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. And this one is a romance, but it's also incredibly emotional and deep because the main female character in here loses her best friend, or her best friend passes away, and she's dealing with that grief and trying to figure out kind of how to live again after losing one of the people that you love the most. And our male main character helps her with her live again list. I think that's what she has. And he helps her go through all those things on her list to, feel alive again. It was really sweet. I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This is a thriller, super fast paced. It's about a housemaid who's a live in for this rich family, and all this crazy stuff happens. And the movie for it just came out. I didn't enjoy the first half as much as I enjoyed the second half. So, with that said, I gave it 3.7 stars. Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was recommended to me by my cousin. And this is literary fiction. It's dual timeline, follows the parents in one timeline and the kids in another timeline as adults. Her writing in this is so gorgeous. I love her writing so much. It made me really excited to read her um, other 2 novels that I have. I have Carrie Soto's Back and Daisy Jones and the Six on my TBR bookcase over here. So I'm really excited to get to those because her writing in here was amazing. Some of the characters aren't like super likable, but having grown up in California and been to Malibu several times, I really enjoyed reading about this city and the people there and this family. I gave it 3.75 stars. Back to Thriller with The House in the Pines by Anna Reyes. I read this in one sitting. I thought it was super fast paced and really interesting, but also maybe because I hadn't read too many thrillers. I think if I read it now, maybe it's a little predictable, but I love the topic that it touches on with psychology and mental health. So I really did enjoy that aspect of this book. But the writing, I think this might be her first book. I gave it 4 stars. Then I went to The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I think that's how it's pronounced. Another thriller. A wedding takes place on an Irish island, a remote Irish island. Need I say more? I gave this one 3 stars. None of the characters were likable, and I felt like I couldn't really connect to them, but the writing was amazing. The way she described the setting of this Irish island being eerie was great. Then I read The Last House Guest by Megan Miranda. This, I think, was my second 5 star of the year. It takes place in a small beach town, dual timeline, the earlier timeline, where there was a party and an incident, and then the present timeline of the main woman trying to figure out why the crime happened at this party, and because everything's pointing to her and she has to figure it out before the authorities come for her. Then I read Nothing Ever Happens Here by Serafina Nova Glass. This is small town. The main woman witnesses a crime. Then fast forward, and the woman is now dealing with someone leaving her notes and about the crime that took in place. And she has to figure out a way to keep her family and her friends safe and figure out what's going on. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then I picked up Sarah Nova Glass's book On a Quiet Street because I saw that it had high ratings. This is a domestic thriller, I think it's called. And it follows 3 women who live on this suburban street and their interconnected stories and the crazy things that are happening. I think I just couldn't connect to the characters, and it wasn't, maybe I just don't like domestic thrillers. I don't know. But I gave this one 1.5 stars. Then I read Daughter of Mine by Megan Miranda, another thriller. This one is started out a little bit slower, but then it picked up. It follows this woman whose mother was a con artist and married the sheriff in this town, but then her mother goes missing. Now, as an adult, she's trying to figure out what happened to her mom and what's going on in this small town that her dad was the sheriff at. I gave this one 4.75 stars. Wasn't quite at the 5 star mark for me, but it was still pretty good. Then I thought I should try something different, and I read The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. This follows a librarian who works at a library where there's a war going on, so she tries to save as many books as she can, and her assistant, who's a talking plant, and they get on a boat and they take off to her old village that she grew up on, which is kind of run down, and she tries to end up using the books to kind of help out the town. I gave this one 4 stars. Then I went back to thrillers and read Five Survive by Holly Jackson. This is 5 friends in an RV on the way to spring break, and then they're trapped by a sniper who wants to know the secret that one of them is hiding, but the problem is they each have a secret. This one kept me on the edge of my seat. There was so much going on, and just the dynamic of all of them. My favorite character was probably Arthur, but there were some things in it that felt like a little weird, like she keeps referencing the curtains, but then nothing really comes of it. So I gave this one 4.75 stars. It was so close to a 5 star. So close. Then I picked up this book by Cynthia Murphy, and it's about a small secret society at a boarding school. And the students start dropping off like flies. I didn't really like the twist at the end, and it felt a little disjointed, but I really did like the atmosphere and the secret society aspect of it. So I ended up giving this 3 stars. Then I read No Place to Hide by Megan Lally, I think it is. This is about a young woman who wants to go to Yale, and her parents are super successful, and she's wanting to live the perfect life, and she'll do anything to make sure she keeps that perfect life. In fact, she hides something that had happened at a party in the past. So it's also dual timeline, But again, none of the characters felt very likable, even the ones who are tormenting her because they know what happened at this party. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars as well. Then I got this one in the mail, Forget Me Not by Stacy Willingham, which is about a woman who's a journalist and her sister had went missing years before, and she has to go back home to take care of her mom who got hurt, and now she's trying to figure out what happened to her sister, how she went missing, where she went, what happened to her, and she stumbles upon a cult. And I found this super interesting, but it was a little slow moving. However, I love Stacy Willingham's writing. This was incredible writing. Again, I felt like I could picture myself in the setting that she was explaining or describing. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. Then I picked up The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and this is like Criminal Minds but teenagers. And I loved it so much. I actually read this alongside with my parents, and they both ended up loving it too. We were trying to find out if there's more books that we could recommend to our students. I ended up giving this book 5 stars. One of my absolute favorites. Then I wanted to read something more autumn because we were getting closer to autumn, and I read Falling Like Leaves by Misty Wilson, a Bramble Falls novel, which makes me think there's going to be maybe another one. And there's these gorgeous sprayed edges. I loved this book so much. It was exactly what I wanted. It's a young adult romance novel, and it's like, feels like you're in a Gilmore Girls set, kind of. This town of Bramble Falls made me want to live somewhere like Bramble Falls. I don't know how I can move to a fictional town, but if I could, I would. I gave this one 5 stars. Then I needed to pick up Rebel Witch, the second book in the Crimson Moth duology by Kristen Cicerelli, still follows Rune and Gideon as they try to figure out they're on 2 different sides of this war between the witches and the witch hunters and the society that they live in. I read this in a whole night. I didn't even sleep. I just stayed up all night and read this, and I gave this one 5 stars. I think I loved it more than the first one. The ending was perfect. Then I read The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This is kind of like a spicy Hallmark novel. It follows a witch who lives with her aunt and her cousin who are also witches, and she has her heart broken one night and she curses the guy that broke it. Then later, he ends up coming to this town that she lives in with her cousin and her aunt, and the curse hits him. I have to try to figure out how to break the curse because all this crazy stuff starts happening in the town. I gave this one 3.5 stars because it was really fun, really cute, really short. Then I finished Dune Messiah, the second book in the Dune series by Frank Herbert. Yeah. And this was a loaned book to me from my uncle. I really enjoy the series so far. I'm definitely going to be continuing the series with the next book, which I think is The Children of Dune. With that said, I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read The Cinnamon Bun Bookstore by Lori Gilmore, and I figured that it was going to be very autumn because if you look at the cover, there's like all these leaves, falling leaves, and then I found out while I was reading it that it takes place in summer. So it wasn't really what I was expecting, and the storyline felt a little flat. The mystery wasn't like a big mystery, but our main character of Hazel, I felt like I could totally relate to her. She was awkward. I feel awkward. She owns a bookstore. That's like a dream of mine to own a bookstore. I loved her character so much. So I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars. Then I reread Twilight. I read it back when I was in high school, and then a student of mine wanted to read it, and so we kind of like buddy read it. And I forget how much the book is so much better than the movies. So I gave this one 4.25 star rating. Then I picked up the next book in the Natural series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, still following the same kids, teenagers, in their quest of finding criminals. And this one, I think I enjoyed maybe not as much as the first one, but I still love them. Still love the characters, still love the book. I gave this one a 4.75. And then I picked up Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. And I wasn't expecting to like this as much as I did because I tried reading it before and I couldn't get into it. But this time when I read it, I could not stop reading it. It follows a young girl named Pippa who's doing a school project on a disappearance and crime that happened a couple of years before. And so now she's trying to figure out what really happened because she doesn't believe what the cops and everyone are saying. I couldn't stop reading it. I loved it so much. I gave it a 5-star rating. It's a lot better than the TV show on Netflix, too. Then I read Soul Searching by Lila Sage. I was expecting great things about this book because I loved her other book series, the Rebel Blue Ranch series. This one follows a woman named Collins Cartwright who can see ghosts. So this is kind of a paranormal romance, but I felt like the male main character we didn't learn too much about, even though we get both of their perspectives in this book. I ended up giving it 2.75 stars. Then I read Macbeth. This is a reread. I read it because I was making my students read it, and so I needed to reread it to remember everything that happens. When it comes to classics, I have a hard time rating because I feel like they're a classic for a reason. So I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. Then I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. Gillig? I don't know how to pronounce the last name. And I was in a huge reading slump before. Then I picked this book up and I loved it so much. This is a fantasy novel and it follows a girl named Elspeth who has a monster in her head. And she's trying to just navigate life. And this was so amazing. The world building in this was insane. I absolutely loved this world that she created in this book, and the magic system was amazing. I gave this one 5 stars. And of course, I had to pick up the second one in the duology, Two Twisted Crowns, and this is following up what happened in the first one. I also gave this one 5 stars. Then I picked up The Institute by Stephen King, and I think this was the biggest book I read this year. This is a sci-fi book, follows Luke, who's taken to the Institute because he has telekinetic abilities, and there at the Institute, they are using kids, experimenting with them because of their powers. The things that he was trying to bring up, I think, kind of about society and about just the philosophies he was talking about. I found that really interesting. It reminded me kind of the short story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And it also reminded me of the movie The Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Like a mix of those two things, the short story and that movie. And so I really liked that aspect of it. I didn't like what they were doing, but I liked the aspect of what he was trying to talk about and what he was trying to say in this book. It was pretty intense, like I think most of his books are. And some of the writing, like I had never heard these phrases used before. Like I think one kid says, put a egg in your shoe and beat it. I'd never heard a teenager use that phrase before. But I did enjoy the storyline, and so I gave it a 4.25. Then I thought, since this book takes place in 2025, I should read it in 2025. I read The Running Man by Stephen King, or as he originally wrote it as Richard Bachman under his pen name. I didn't know that. I didn't know that he wrote dystopian novels too, but since the movie came out, I thought I should read it. And then when I was reading it, I realized, oh, it takes place in 2025. And then I thought, I need to make sure I read it this year before the year ends. And so I did. It's a pretty short read, very action packed, very intense. The end, I would say, was pretty gruesome. I think I gave this one a 3.75 stars. I can't remember. I'll make sure I put the correct rating up on the corner. And that was the last book I completely finished so far in the year. And there's not too many days left. But I'm still currently reading All In by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, the third book in the Natural series. I hope I can finish this one before the year ends as well. Then I will make it 34 by the end of the year. But thank you for watching this video and listening to me go through all the books I've read this year. I would love to hear what books you read this year, and if there were any of your 5 stars standouts, please leave those in the comments. I would love to hear of them. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content, especially coming up this year in my journey of reading. Hopefully I can hit the same amount that I read this year, but also my journey of gaining more confidence in front of a camera. So please, thank you, and see you again.